Hi, hello. So in this video we are going to see a summary of everything we saw previously. Um, so first I will show you what I'm talking about. So this example will be the star rating. Star rating is, for example, something you can find on Yelp or pretty much all system where if you want to note someone, you just say, well, out of 5 stars, I give him 4 stars. So in our example, it's the star system. So here you can see that on our star system, so I have my color is magenta or something, and I can just click on it. And when I change the value, you can see that I'm sending the value back, so it can be used as an output parameter by other view components. So in your case, a record editor. But also you can see here that when I'm selecting a record instance, the value change. So we have input parameters and output parameters. And you can see that this one is in black and this one is in red. So what's the difference between this view component and the previous ones we saw? So you can see here that we have two versions. So you have two versions of the star rating. You have star rating and star rating click. So star rating, which is this one, it's pretty much what you found before. So we have as input parameters, we have an inspector which is record definitions. We give the record instance ID coming from the grid, and here instead of having the attachments like we saw in the previous video, we display the fields that are typed integer, and the number of stars is 10. But the difference between this view component and the previous one is if I change the number of stars, you can see here that the number of stars displayed as design time has changed to 5. And here when I change to 10, I can see 10 stars. So that before we had only a very simple design type view components where we only display the sentence, but you can see here that actually you can have something way more complex. So in this example, so I'm just having a record inspector out of the box to get record definitions, a custom one to get integers type. But in this version of the star rating, you can see we went much further. So here we have just standard one to get the field, standard expression. But here you can see we have a slider. This is not out of the box. And you can see here that when I move the slider, you can see the number here and here of the stars display changes. And here I can just click to tell what is the default value instead of giving an integer like here. Same way I can tell what color I want to display for selected and the one that are not selected. And here you can see it's a color picker. So what it means is this one has a lot more custom inspectors. And this one actually is this custom inspector I am using as this slider, which is a third-party library, third-party JavaScript library. So this example will show you how to use a lot more custom inspectors, but also how to use third-party JavaScript libraries inside your code. And also how to interact at design phase, so it's more user-friendly, for example, when you code a view component, because it's maybe more user-friendly to say instead of typing the number of stars you want to display, to tell the user where you can just slide, and this way you select the number of stars and display here, and instead of saying the number by default is 5, well, you just click and select. And same thing to selecting the color, instead of typing it, they can just select it inside the color picker. So this example, we have two view components. One is star rating, which is a simple one, and the other one is star click rating. So I will not talk about star rating because it's pretty much the same thing we saw earlier. So in the config we have some input parameters, and this one is actually an output parameter, but And in the design directive, design service, we can find our parameters. So this one is using the definition picker, and here we can find our custom field select. This one, so if you remember about the video where we were only filtering the field and we were getting back the field of type integer. Last video it was field type attachment. This one is field type integer. So it's pretty much exactly the same thing as the example we saw earlier, but this time we just select the field type integer. So I will not talk about this one. I will talk about this one, which is more complex. So in the config file, we have more input parameters. So we have number of stars selected, number of stars to display, default amount, and 2 colors. So we can find back everything here with the default values. And here you can see this one is a property. So selected star value. So if I go to star click rating, selected star value like we saw in the previous video, this one is an output parameter other view components can consume to know how many stars have been selected by the user at runtime. So this one is a bit more complex. So if we go to the design manager service, so we can see that on this one, so we still have our values for maximum amount of stars, default value star. So this one, the difference is we have a default value. So the default value is defined here. So that's why we use find to get the input parameter max amount of stars, and we get the default value. So this one is for the default value, and like we saw in the previous design service, we are getting actually the value or the default value. Then for each parameter, we are saying what inspector we are going to use. So the first one, number of stars selected, is the standard one. Then we are using a slider, and then, well, everything else is custom, as you can see here. So the first one is a slider, the second one is a default amount, so when we click on stars, and the other two are the same one, color picker select. So we have one JavaScript file per type. So for example, let's take the color picker. So here is the inspector for the color picker. So as you can see, it's pretty easy. On this one, it's pretty simple. When we click on the color picker, we're just saving the data. So if we look inside the HTML code for the color picker, we just display a color picker. And when the user is clicking on use color, we just save it. So that's what this code is doing, saving the color. So we are storing the color inside X color picker color. Inside the AG model somewhere. So we are saving here. And so what is the path? The path is what is defined here. So default, for example, color star selected. So $scope.path, think about it as input parameter, the parameter. So what scope cell prop is doing is that we say save this value here. That's all you need to know. Basically, automatically we are going to understand that you want to store inside color star selected the value that has been selected by the user in the color picker. So this was for the color picker. For the slider, it's about pretty much the same thing. So we are using the object as this slider that is mapped to a value. And if we are going to use the slider, so when we save this value the same way, so we have the value stored in mid slider value, which is this one. So we just store inside the path, so inside the parameter, we are going to store the value using scope cell prop. So the same way we have an inspector for the last one, for the default value star. So here we are just displaying star, so it's just a character, so star icon. And when I'm going to click on it, it's going to get the number of stars I clicked on. And once again, so here it's here. So once again, so I'm going to display a certain number of stars, as we saw here, which depends on this one, the slider. So it's here, so I'm getting the color star selected, color star not selected, and I'm getting the max amount of stars, and I'm going to display them, building it. So when the value change, I'm going to redraw the number of stars. So when I click on the stars, I will know in the event how many stars have been selected, and I'm going to store the data inside the scope path, so inside the parameter. So as you can see, I used as a slider object, which is not something we provide. We provide some libraries, for example D3 or NVD3, but we don't provide as a slider. So how do we use it? So here, for example, you can see under web app lib that I have slider mean.js, which is a library from slider, AngularJS slider. So you just need to copy this Angular library and put it inside web app lib, for example, and the name, a name. So for example, name and version most of the time. Then you have to declare this, that you are going to use this library inside your code. So you do that in your project under bundle in bundle.conf.json. Under your bundle.conf.json, you can see here that under app scripts and under ext scripts, I give the path to access this RSZ slider. So don't count web apps, count after web apps. So lib RSZ slider 587, RSZ slider mean. So don't finish by .js because we are going to add it automatically. So that's how you declare your third-party libraries. So it will be added automatically inside your application, so it can be used at runtime or design time. So that's how it's working. And if we are looking, so this was for the design phase. So let's look at the design, which is more intricate this time. So here is our design directive and our design directive. So you can see here that this time I'm going to display stars in design time here when I change a value. So here I'm just repeating the star class object. And this time in design directive, instead of having just a template, you can see here I have a Rx configuration object. And in my Rx configuration object, I'm subscribing to Rx data. So Rx data is an object that contains every attributes. So when something's changed in Rx data, I will just update stars. And if you remember, inside our design service, we add our Rx data here. So we are interested in Rx data max amount of stars. So when the max amount of stars is modified in Rx data, so I'm getting the property using this time scope Rx configuration model prop. So I'm getting the maximum of stars, I'm storing it here. And here, in the design directive, I'm saying that I want to display star in get stars. So get star is being this, and I'm just returning an array of the number of stars. So that's how it's working at design. So this time, the design is more intricate. So at runtime, so we have directive.js and we have direct.html. So this one, at runtime, it's pretty more simple actually. We just display the number of stars with the right color, and when we click on it, we propagate the data, like we saw before. So in the HTML, we just display the number of stars, and we call a method when the user is clicking on the stars icons. In the directive, once again, we get our input parameter, which are stored in Rx configuration properties by name. We find our event manager that we are going to use to say, well, when we select the number of stars, so coming from onStar select handler here, we are going to tell the others view component using the output parameter selected star value that the value has changed. And here the code is pretty simple. When the input value is changed, we just redraw the stars with the right colors.